Welcome to Audiobooks by JT, your home for original, custom-made stories brought to life one chapter at a time. Every upload is crafted with rich narration, cinematic pacing, and visuals to spark your imagination. We release chapters regularly, so settle in and follow along from the very beginning, or jump to the latest episode to catch the heat of the moment. Some scenes get intense or graphic. Viewer discretion is advised. If you enjoy immersive storytelling, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next chapter drop. Now, without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Audiobooks by JT presents The Sisters of Atherra.
Chapter 1, Ash and Hunger Part 1, The Taking. The world had grown tired of meat grinder wars waged by men. Banners rose like promises and fell like lies. Kings traded sons for soil and called it legacy. When the smoke thinned, women were the ones left counting the graves. From that ledger came the Sisters of Atherra, oath-bound under fire and iron, forged in the cruel arithmetic of survival. They moved with the chill precision of a winter tide. Villages that bartered grain to lords who starved their wives were made examples. The sisters didn't argue with that kind of math. They inked new rules in the ash of the old world and enforced them with blade and will. The village went up fast. Thatched roofs blistered and folded, doors coughed smoke and slumped like spent lungs. Sparks blew low along the lane and stuck to bare feet. A doll lay face down in the mud with one glass eye reflecting the fire. A chicken's scream choked to silence. The air tasted like cinders and old oak, the kind of smoke that lives in your hair for weeks and never quite leaves. Somewhere a dog barked once, then twice, and then learned not to. The Sisters of Atherra cut through that ruin in a tight, disciplined line. Shields overlapping, spears shouldered, short swords sheathed for the work that came after the crush. There were no wasted shouts. There was only breath measured to distance and steel sharpened for flesh. Astrid led. Golden braids tied for war framed eyes as cold as a mountain spring. Her blue leathers let her move like a spark skittering across dry straw. Quick, sure, impossible to bottle. A chieftain's tattoo wrapped her arm in clean geometry, each mark a story you wouldn't want told about you. She did not hurry. She did not have to. This village had nowhere to run. Freya held a steady half-step to Astrid's right, a deliberate choice they'd made 100 times. Astrid struck first. Freya made sure the strike couldn't be answered. She was tall and powerfully built, broad shoulders, corded arms, a back made for carry and combat, and the winged circlet resting in her brown hair marked her as more than another blade in the line. Where Astrid hammered, Freya carved. Etched steel rode her shoulders and bracers, but what set her apart was the controlled strength in her stance and the stillness of a fighter who waits for the opening she wants. Their law tonight was simple. Men who raised steel and would not bend were cut down. Some were spared for work or proving, and by the sisters' law, any warrior could claim a man for breeding, but only if he met the requirements. Full-grown and sound in body, no sickness in the blood, steady under fear, a mind that could hold discipline, and a temper that did not love cruelty. A claimed man was not taken to bed. He was taken to proving. He worked, he learned the rules, and at the end he chose by oath, accept the bond and duty, or refuse and be released or cut, according to his conduct. It wasn't mercy. It was policy as old as their banners. They rounded the granary. The fight came to meet them. For men burst from the smoke. They wielded a rusted spear, 2 wood axes, and a long knife. No armor worth naming. Fear made their hands quick, not good. The spearman thrust for Astrid's ribs. She pivoted half a step. The spearhead hissed past leather. Her left hand chopped down on his wrist. Her right slid steel from sheath and drew a single line from the notch above his collarbone to the soft of his belly. The wound opened and poured hot blood down his tunic in a sudden sheet. He folded before he understood he'd been cut. The first axeman roared to sound brave. Freya let him commit, stepped inside the swing, and stamped his lead knee so it buckled. As he dropped, she slid her forearm under his jaw, braced a palm at the crown, and turned with her hips. One clean twist. The neck cracked sharp and small. He was done, his body hit the ground with a loud thud. The second axe came high and blind. Freya ducked under the arc, felt wind on her shoulders, and slid close where the haft was useless. A short cut across the inside of his thigh opened him hot. Dark blood striped her bracer. She drove a tight thrust under the ribs and felt the resistance give. He folded hard, weapon pinwheeling into the dirt. She turned as a knife flashed for Astrid's flank. Freya met the lunge, caught the man's knife wrist with her left hand, stepped outside his lead foot, and rolled his forearm over her own. The leverage bent his elbow and drove his hand inward. The point slid under his ribs and buried to the hilt. His breath left in a wet gasp as dark blood soaked his tunic. Astrid stepped in and ended it with a clean heart thrust. The knife hit dirt after the body. Astrid's voice cut the smoke. First line, shields high, spears at half length. Advance 2 and hold the lane. Freya followed with the captain's cadence. Left file, guard door 1 and door 2. Right file, cover the windows, center on me. Hook and clear on my mark. No lone pushes. Astrid added, maintain interval 2 paces. Step now. Across the lane, Atherran women did the same work without flourish. A man with a bow died with the string half drawn. Another raised a pitchfork and then seemed to understand, too late, what a spear really was. 2 were claimed. An archer with a steady stance and a smith with wrists like iron pins. Their hands were bound, their chins lowered, their futures uncertain but not brief. The sisters moved on. At the edge of a collapsed barn, a young man stood waiting. His pitchfork lay abandoned. His hands were open at his sides. Smoke streaked one cheek like war paint he hadn't chosen. Broad through the chest, rope muscled along the forearm's sun-browned skin. Hair that refused to lie flat. A small healed scar tucked beneath his left cheekbone like a lesson learned early. His eyes were gray and steadiness is rarer than courage when fire is licking the thatch. Freya watched the pulse at his throat, fast, then settling because he made it. She liked that he chose his breath and kept it. Up close he smelled of smoke and pine, solid through the chest, handsome in the kind that didn't pose. She let the thought sit. Your name? She asked, voice low, as if the question belonged to just the two of them inside the noise. Eric, he said. The smoke roughened his voice, but didn't shake it. I'm a farmhand. Astrid's head turned, attention tightening like a drawn string. Then why aren't you fighting, Eric? Because I'm not foolish, he said, a knot laugh in his mouth. A pitchfork against trained warriors isn't a fight. It's a faster funeral. Freya's mouth warmed. Good math, she said, then tipped her chin toward the burning lane. And you know who we are? Yes, you're the sisters of Atherra. Word travels. You cut roads before you cut banners. You break the storehouses that feed a lord's levy. You chalk the doors you clear. You take only people who can hold a line. When folk surrender, you do the same thing every time so everyone knows the rules, even if they hate them. His jaw set. Our reeve is Halder. He serves his lord first, no matter what. Schemes a scoop from every sack. When the fields are thin, he doubles the tithe. Sends grain out at night to win favors, and a seat nearer the high table. And the lords he serves are no better. They beat women and children to make a point, and they laugh at the poor starving in their streets. They do not serve the people they swore to protect. He lifted his chin. Last moon you warned Halder. He laughed, sent you salt, and said you wouldn't dare cut his road because he had men and friends. He was gambling our lives for his standing. Same as always. He isn't even here. The coward left for the capital this morning. Then you understand why we're here, Astrid said. She didn't blink. The space she kept at Freya's shoulder narrowed by a breath, a quiet claim. Eric looked from one to the other. Am I talking myself into a worse end? Maybe, Freya said, letting her eyes hold as a heartbeat too long. Maybe not. Men who keep their heads tend to live longer. It landed as advice and a compliment. Freya straightened. You intrigue me, Eric, she said, voice steady enough to carry. By the sister's law, I claim you as my candidate. Astrid's control held, but jealousy threaded the calm. So be it, chain him, she said, even with a small edge. Tie his wrists and elbows and put him on a short lead. Her glance slid to Freya, brief and possessive. Two sisters ghosted from the smoke and took Eric by the arms. He didn't thrash. He tested the leather once, felt the bite, and decided to save his strength. Freya stepped in to check the binding, trying to look quick and professional. But her hands lingered on his for a moment too long. Astrid's gaze cut to the touch and cooled the space between them by a degree. They finished the village the way they started it, methodical. Teams moved in 2s and 3s, clearing every inch of the village. Loft ladders were kicked loose. Thatch was raked with spearhooks until the last hiders dropped. Men who rushed out with weapons or hate in their eyes were cut where they stood. Men who threw down steel and held a steady gaze were bound for judgment. Those who begged and lied in the same breath were weighed and found wanting. Cellars were opened and read by torchlight. Faces counted, blades taken, stories tested. Women who asked to join were brought to the square. Names and skills noted: herbcraft, weaving, and cooking. The children kept close. Boys old enough to wield a spear were set aside for proving. The smaller ones were given water and a quiet corner. The badly injured were given mercy, swift and clean. Freya's first line marked each door with 1 slash for cleared, 2 for danger, and tallied what was inside: grain, salt, or iron, so the quartermasters could follow without questions. Carts were dragged to open lanes, the last small fires stamped flat. By the time the eastern roofs fell to ember, only 3 sounds remained: wet thatch hissing on coals, the soft scrape of chalk, and the measured breath of women who had made order out of fire. Part 2: Iron and Oaths. Dawn smoked the horizon gray. Behind them, his village was a smudge on the world. One thin column of black unspooling from the roofs, pointing at what was gone. Eric let himself look once. The ache came quick and clean. The empty threshold where his mother used to stand wiping flour on her apron. His father's cough that had rattled the walls for months until the last bad sickness took him. And his mother following soon after, leaving the house stripped to silence. Even before the fires, there hadn't been much future for him there, just thin soil, thinner hopes, and the Reeves' demands for better crop yield. He breathed, felt the sting pinch behind his eyes, and set his jaw. Then he closed that door without slamming it, turned from the smoke, and fixed his gaze on the road ahead. He did not look back. Freya slid back along the column with the quiet rhythm of a patrol change. Duty on the surface, nothing to see. Up close, she saw the truth in his face. He was sad, and he was steady. He looked once toward the smoke, and then chose the road. When her shoulder brushed his arm, the warmth trapped in her armor crossed the small space between them. Heat started low in her belly for no good reason. She didn't know why it was there. She banked it and matched his stride. "You're handling this well," she said. "Most men shake apart on a day like this." He nodded once. "I did my shaking last winter. The sickness took my parents. After that, there wasn't much left to break. If I stare backward, I'll stop moving. So I breathe. And I walk forward." His eyes dropped to the leather lead in her hand, then back up. "Today, that's all I can do." The heat in her belly nudged again. She pressed it down and let professionalism cover it. "Breath and steps will do," she said, even as her tone softened. "Keep both, and you'll come through all right." At the front, Astrid felt the shift like pressure between the shoulder blades. Jealousy didn't blaze, it tightened, clean, sharp, and controlled. Freya kept her voice low. "You should know who I am to her. I am Astrid's shield. That means I stand between her and any blade. It also means I am her wife." "Shield and wife," he said steady. "So you protect her, and you belong to each other." "Yes," Freya said. "I earned it. In our tribe, that honor goes to the most skilled and the strongest. I fought and bled for years to win the right to guard her and stand at her side." She lifted her chin toward the column. "As shield, I have duties. I train our warriors. I captain the first line. I choose when we push and when we hold. And I keep Astrid alive. That is the first and last order of every day." She let a breath out. "There is another duty I have chosen for myself. I want a child, not only because I want to be a mother, but because it is right to pass on what I carry. Strength, skill, will. Those should not end with me." Her eyes stayed on the road. "For that, I want a man who is strong in the body and strong in the spirit, someone who can work, obey when it matters, think when it counts, and still be kind." She glanced at him once, brief and direct. "You are the first candidate I have chosen to bring back for that purpose." His step hitched, then steadied. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," she said. "You held your fear. You spoke plain. You saw the truth of your Reeve and didn't make excuses for him. That is strength. That is a start. Astrid won't like anyone close to me. Jealousy is part of how she guards what's hers, but my choice stands. If you stay, it will be because you earn it. If you prove unworthy, I end it. That is the law we live by." By noon, the fortress rose from the cliff, tight and strong. An outer wall and ditch narrowed the way in. Watch platforms looked down the approach. Everything here had a purpose. The main hall sat in the center like a held shield. It was the most guarded place inside the walls. A second ring of stakes and a waist-high stone wall wrapped it. 2 iron-bound doors, one front and one rear, each with sisters posted day and night, shields touching and spears crossed. Everyone knew this was the heart. It was Astrid and Freya's home. Around the main hall, The camp was arranged in rings. Closest sat the first line, their barracks built low and tough, doors facing the hall so they could form on it in breaths. Weapon racks stood under the eaves. Drill squares marked the ground like clean scars. Beyond the first line were the scouts' huts, a little further out and closer to the high walkways. Tether posts and light stables let them ride fast. A narrow path led to the watch towers so messages could climb without crossing the yard. Near the inner walls lived the steady work, farmers, smiths, and cooks. Gardens sat in tidy beds. Smokehouses leaned cool along the shade line. Forges breathed under awnings. Big kettles simmered near the cook fires. The smell of meat and metal mixed into the same honest heat. If you looked from the walls inward, you could read the place like a map. Workers, then scouts, then soldiers, then the hall. Inside, the main hall was long and high. It was plain on the outside and extravagant within. Clean beams, carved posts, woven banners, and a bright central hearth. Polished shields and oiled maps hung straight. On the dais stood Astrid's high seat with a second chair beside it for Freya. A stair climbed to a loft where they kept their private things. The order of it felt like pressure and safety at the same time. Astrid gave 3 plain orders, and the hall moved. Quartermasters began counting stores. Runners carried messages to the towers. Captains took roll and set drills. Freya's voice followed, steady and exact, sending the first line to clean armor, oil blades, and post door and window watches. In minutes, the fortress felt like a machine turning, each part doing its work, because they told it to. "Time to take you to the underhall," Astrid said, and led them through a side door and down a narrow stair cut into the rock. The air cooled and smelled of iron and tallow. For all the size of the hall above, the underhall was small. 1 short corridor, a bench, and 2 cells with barred fronts. The straw was clean. The walls were dry. The far cell stood empty. "Get in," Astrid said. Eric stepped into the nearer cell. 3 stone walls, a low bench, a straw mattress, a bucket. Space to pace twice and decide not to. It did not feel cruel. It felt sure. Freya stopped at the bars and set her stance to neutral. Hands loose, chin level, eyes on the latch instead of on him. Whatever flickered inside, she locked it down. Astrid watched from the other side, and Freya let the moment look like routine guard work, nothing more. Astrid stood on the other side of the bars. Her voice was cool and clear. "You are close to our home because I allow it. You will keep quiet. You will not test the iron. You will answer when asked. If you fail at those simple things, you will not see the morning." Freya set a water skin and a heel of bread where he could reach without lunging. "Drink," she said. "Small sips. 3 bites. Then stop." Her tone was gentle, but the order was exact. He followed the instruction without rushing. 1 sip. 2. 3. He set the skin down even though his throat asked for more. He broke the bread and ate 3 neat bites. He waited. The first swallow dragged, then eased. He exhaled like a man who had made a small promise and kept it. Good, he can follow simple orders. Astrid's gaze slid to Freya. "I allowed you to bring back a candidate," she said, even and sharp. "But understand this. He must prove himself to me just as much as he proves himself to you. I fully understand because we are one." Freya replies. Freya kept her voice even. "I am not seeking a bond with you. Astrid is my wife. That is enough of a relationship for me. But I want a child, and for that I need a man. If you remain, it will be because you earn your place by work, obedience, and control, not because I smiled at you in a burning street." The words struck him. A quick flicker of hurt crossed his face before he steadied his breath. "I understand," he said. "I'll do my best." Astrid stepped a fraction closer to the bars. "Sleep now," she said, each word a clean edge. "At first light, your proving begins." With the decision made, she turned away, and the corridor grew quiet again. Freya lingered 1 breath longer, her fingers brushing the iron once, then followed her chieftain into the torchlit hall where drills, oaths, and the steady thrum of forges carried the promise of tomorrow. Behind them, in the clean cell cut from rock, a young man stared at the ceiling and wandered about the proving trials ahead. End of Chapter 1.
Thanks for listening to Audiobooks by JT. I'd love to hear what you thought of today's chapter. What worked for you? What could be better next time? Pacing, voices, sound balance, or imagery? Leave your thoughts and suggestions in the comments so I can keep improving each episode. If you enjoyed it, consider liking and subscribing so you don't miss the next chapter. Until then, have a great day, and thanks again for being here.